So we're at the BASTL booth again, but this time with Peter. How's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Looks like a whole new Euro line you've been working on.
Yes, I've been working for the past couple months on my first eurorack modules. So in the past I was doing a bunch of the desktop stuff. Last year I released the soft pop, and this year I'm getting into sort of expanding my music practice, playing with mixers mostly, lots of feedback, and I made a bunch of modules to sort of address that and make it all voltage controlled and crazy. So,
brilliant. It's a nice addition to the modular format, I think.
I hope so. I hope so. So I'm here showing a couple different modules, but mainly focusing on the dark matter. This is the first one we're bringing out, and this is a feedback module. So it does audio feedback. So if you send in a signal, you get this sort of noisy feedback effects, but I can show you in more detail what that does. But basically, so I perform in the mixer, so I'm playing a lot with volume levels and with EQs, and then I take the whole signal and I feed it back into the mixer, and from there you can EQ it, but then you can start to bring in these other tones, which sort of start to fill in the signal.
A more unique sound, I think.
Well, it's the sound of the circuitry sort of fighting for life.
It's fighting itself over and over again.
Yeah, and I mean, I like that sound of like, what do these circuits do when they can't do everything you're asking of them, and they're forced to function in some way without dying. You know, they're going to keep fighting. And you listen to, I think this is really like the sound of electronics. You're really listening to what it does when it's not doing what you want it to do, in a way.
So you mentioned there being some EQ on there. What control have we got over that?
So what this does, basically, you've got your input level, which is CV controlled. Then let's turn that, some other signal in there. Okay, then, so you've got your input signal, CV controlled, then you've got a wet and dry, so your clean signal or your affected signal, that's voltage controlled as well. Then you can EQ it with low and high. And you've got a boost as well, which is voltage controlled. So you can sort of overdrive the signal. So we've got our high and our low. Then you bring in your feedback, and which is also voltage controllable. So you go from this nice but kind of boring drum beat to this really full, intense, overdriven drum beat.
Having the input gain amount, like a VCA on the in, and the EQ, and CV over the crossfade, I think just makes the whole thing a bit more creative for parallel mixing.
Absolutely, and it gives you lots of potential for doing audio frequency modulation. So it's one audio input, 5 CV inputs, and then another audio for external CV. But any of these can get audio signals. You can start mix. You can use this as a complex mixer in and of itself, where you're using an audio signal to modulate the crossfade of a highly fed back distorted signal, and that in itself can be sort of an audio input. So it's a lot of experimental ways of just playing with all the different signals in your system, and that's really what I'm trying to do, is make sort of a non-linear way of looking at synthesis, that it's not just about control signals and oscillators going through filters and so on. It's more of like taking the whole system, bringing in pieces of that, creating some sort of new behavior, and then that can sort of spread out into your system again. And there's other modules that I'm developing that sort of address that more, but this is sort of the first foray into that. But in addition to, you were saying about having all the CVs, there's also a bunch of ways that's utilized. So I've got like an envelope follower here that listens to the input, and then I can use that, for instance, to duck. So I'm using that CV. There it is, straight. I love feedback, but it's a bit much. Sometimes it can be overbearing, overwhelming.
It becomes more expressive as well when you can influence it.
Right. So you can influence it, and you can make it less just this wall of sound. So I'm using like the wall of sound, just like endless noise. I'm using the ducking to pull it out. Or I'm inverse, so whenever the kick hits, it brings in the distortion. So you can also use this as a really nice, like, variable dynamic distortion overdrive, as well as introducing these tonal effects. So if we go, there's like the tone, so you can play these tones, and then so you can hear now the tone comes in every time there's a kick hit. And you've got the same thing on your feedback amount, so you can use the envelope follower to control the pitch of your feedback. So there's lots of different ways to access these controls and play them. But again, sort of the theme here is that, like, it's not just feedback, it's also that when you're feeding back, so let me do a really quick catch here, you're dealing with the circuit sort of fighting. So if so whenever it kicks, it obliterates that echo. So right now, let me turn this down for a second. What I have here is I have a drum beat going. I have then the feedback loop goes through this crush delay by Bufaco, goes back in, and whenever my kick drum comes in, it just kills it. It just completely wipes it out because the circuit can't support all of that sound, all that density
So you
of
end up
energy.
with these expresses, little swells of the delay and all the little in-between bits.
Yes. So instead of programming envelopes and making sequences, I'm just using the character of the sound. Sorry to peek a little bit there. I'm using the character of the sound to be gating my echo, basically. And then, from there, there's a million other things. You can take the envelope outputs. I could be using those to change the pitch of my echo, or, to different characteristics of this as well can be controlled by the envelope.
Seems really flexible.
It's super flexible for a medium that is relatively unruly and uncooperative. I mean, I love playing with feedback. It's a really exciting effect.
I like being right on the edge of it just tripping up. It's
Right.
a really fun, interactive way to work with sound.
Right on the edge of feeling like you're in control and it's in control. And that's what I really like about it. It's such a powerful phenomena or effect where the circuitry is like kind of taking over. And it's just getting really distorted and gnarly and breaking down. But then you have, tons of CV control over it. So you can, you're playing with that boundary, which
So-
I find really cool.
Roughly when are these going to be available, the Dark Matter, and I guess what kind of price as well?
We're still finalizing the final prototype, so I can't really say when or how much, but it's going to be in keeping with our other modules. So, you can expect it to be the same price as something like the Knit Rider or something like that.
Yeah, this is early on, but it's to come.
But, end of the summer, before Christmas, let's say.
Yeah, end of the year, before the end of the
This
year.
is my main focus right now. And then to sort of support this, there was a bigger vision in mind, and so I wanted to also show some of these earlier prototypes. But the feedback is part of this, but it really goes hand in hand with the mixer that we're working on here. And this is the Party Mix, which is a performance mixer. So it's just taking all the things I liked about performing on a desktop mixer, bringing it into the modular realm. There's a lot of mixers out there, but this is the mixer that I want. So it's got the faders, and you've got your mute buttons to turn them on and off. You also have 8 VCAs in here, so you have CV control over everything. And we're developing a bunch of expanders, so like a fade expander. So you press fade, and then you tap this, and the volume will fade in over 8 measures or something. So a lot of sort of performance aiding.
The auto fade out on an old mixing console.
Right, exactly. And like scene saving. There's like a lot of possibilities. Some will happen, some won't. I don't know. But what I really like about this, and what was really my take on the mixer, is it's got this. This is an expander standalone module, but it was really designed to go with it. So we're going to be like selling them as a pair potentially. And this is an envelope follower and a gate extractor, and you've got this second send. So you've got your main mix, and then you've got your sub mix. And that you're using to send to, so let's see if I can get this. I'm using that to send to the envelope follower. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm using, let's say, the sort of the character of my hi-hat to control, let's see if that's... Okay.
It's almost like an envelope filter pedal kind of setup. Using the envelope follower, is it to modulate a cutoff?
Right, exactly. So I'm using the envelope follower to modulate the cutoff of a filter, which is up here, or the cinnamon, which is filtering the output of the drums. Now, of course, you don't have to use it in this application, But the idea is that you would have, these can be chained together, of course, so you can have 8, 12 channels, and in the core of your system you would have your final, you'd have your app, your total mix. So you'd have all your signals, and then from those you can sort of be picking and choosing mixes of those as sort of the character of your sound, which you then turn into other kinds of signals to control other aspects of your system. Yeah, so in this case, it's an envelope follower and gate extractor, and I can be using the gates to clock my sequencer and so on.
It allows you to derive information and get the rest of the setup to work along with whatever you're putting into the mixer.
Yes, exactly. So again, you're not getting into sequencers and saying, okay, I'm going to make these match up and sync them. You're using the actual character of your sound to derive control signals to control other things. So it always works together. It creates a really nice mix. And then what I like about that is then you can get messy. So when you know it's all going to work kind of no matter what, then you get reckless. Then you turn up the feedback. Then you... And you know
freedom to that when you know the whole thing's going to kind of play along.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like a guided serendipity. It's like these nice little surprises, but you're pretty likely to find a nice surprise. So it's not complete chance or chaos, but it has those elements of unexpected, friendly surprises. And that exists all over the medium, but this is the focus of mine that I'm really pushing, especially.
Well, thanks for showing us these prototypes and Dark Matter, Party Mix, and yeah, look forward to seeing these later in the year.
Cheers. Thank you.